What's up guys, welcome back to the video. This is going to be the history of BMX grinds from then till now. I'm going to be keeping this series alive. It was heavily requested in my previous video where I did this with the flare. Going from single to double to triple, the progression of the flare over the years. If you haven't seen that video, link in the description below if you want to check it out. Basically, it was heavily requested that I keep this series alive and I plan on doing it. So we're going to keep it going right now with the history of the BMX grind from then till now. So I can't do today's video without talking about Matt Hoffman. Matt Hoffman was the originator of the double peg grind on a handrail and basically got us where we are today. Now 1990 was a huge year, not just for Matt Hoffman, but BMX in a whole. Like I said earlier, if you think about how they filmed back then, it was always a year behind. So think about Matt doing the very first handrail in 1990. Now fast forward to 1995, but technically these clips are probably filmed in 1994. Arguably one of the best street riders in the world from 1990 to 2000, Mike Rooftop Escamilla. Now Rooftop ended up getting a video part in Dirty Deeds, one of the most well-rounded riders, and back then that pretty much was a thing to be very well-rounded. He could ride vert, dirt, street, pretty much street was coming up at that time. As you see a lot of these clips, he was doing rails like nothing. He was doing feeble grinds on ledges, feeble grind to bar spin on ledges. A lot of stuff that basically today is still looked at as like, I'm gonna clap because that's absolutely insane. And if you think about it, this was 1995. Now as we skim over Mike's part, you see how progressive he was as a rider. One of the first riders ever to do a kinked rail. One of the first riders ever to do a crooked grind. One of the first riders to do a lot of things out there that you're still seeing to this day where riders are linking tricks together. How absolutely insane is that to think that he was one of the first pioneers to be able to get somebody like Van Homan to ride the way he does, or Corey Martinez to ride the way he does. A lot of riders these days still won't even touch that type of style. They touch a lot of riding where it's just really low and slow. I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm just saying that riding styles have definitely changed. There were more balls out back then, riding really fast at big obstacles. There were very few riders out there in the BMX industry being as progressive as Mike Escamilla. Thinking about the fact that he did overgrinds back in 1995, doing grind down rail to pop out bar spin, grinding down a rail, gapping over the curb. That's absolutely insane and even hard to even think about today in today's standards. There's only a handful of riders I can think of that still ride like this, such as Garrett Reynolds and Dennis Henderson. Now, not too long after that, you had riders such as Cagey coming out on the map. Now, a lot of you guys only recognize his name because he was a vert rider probably when you were watching him, but a lot of you guys don't know that he was a park and street rider back then, doing huge rails way back in the day when he was riding for DC. He did some of the burliest feeble grinds I had ever seen. And that also inspired other riders, even coming out of the BMX racing, such as Brian Foster jumping into trails, also doing street. And that was kind of around when Fit really started to become a big team. So you had like Van Homan on the team, Edwin De La Rosa, Vic Ayala, you had Brian Foster. So it kind of inspired people like Brian Foster to do grinds. I mean, think about it, Brian Foster wasn't really young back then either, and he was doing pedal peg grinds, which means he was grinding his front peg and his rear foot pedal, no peg on the back, down handrails. And that was pretty inventive back then. Speaking of being inventive, you had riders such as Jim Celinski. To this day, crank arm grinds would not be a thing without Jim Celinski. I would say that was in and around the same time that like Edwin and Jim were both doing crank flips. And crank flips became a very, very staple trick in BMX during that time. Kind of died off and now they've become pretty popular as well. Now, a lot of the grinds that are done today have been done within the past 5, maybe 8 years, have been super, super progressive. A lot of riders just coming on the map and knocking stuff out. And to think of the stuff I've seen over the years, like one of my really good friends, Jeremiah Smith, he is probably one of the most underrated street riders out there. The fact that I saw him doing just chilling too, he did a hangover tooth up rail to tail whip out. I want to say about 7 or 8 years ago. And for those of you guys that are unfamiliar with a hangover tooth grind is, it is a toothpick grind, but you're having your bike hang over to the other side. Now imagine going up a handrail like that to tail whip out. That is absolutely insane. The fact that he wasn't even filming those tricks, they were just doing it for fun. So to think about what people put out on the internet now, and they're linking together all these different grinds on small ledges, I just think that BMX in a whole kind of needs to go back to that raw format where people are just going balls to the wall at big stuff. And the fact that Garrett Reynolds and Dennis Anderson still exist in the industry are going to be what inspires the riders to do that. Now I know there's a ton of riders that were hugely influential between 1990 to current day. And the riders I can think of, like I used to watch a video called A Day Late and a $1 Short. It had Stephen Hamilton and Ian Schwartz in it. Back then they were doing crank arm grinds and nose manuals like nobody's business. And it was kind of like overlooked because that wasn't really a thing to do. It wasn't the popular cool thing to do back then. And then out of nowhere, crank arm grinds became a thing. And at the end of the day, it's really crazy to think of the progression of BMX and all the different combos that people are doing right now with bar spins in and tail whips out, and it's just absolutely insane. I think it's always good to take a step back and just look at the progression and look at who and what got us here to today and give them the respect that is absolutely deserved. So big shout out to Matt Hoffman for getting us to the point we are today. Would we be here today without Matt Hoffman? That's hard to say. You speculate in the comments below and let me know what type of trick you want to see me tackle for the next BMX history video. So with that being said, if you guys have any other suggestions for future videos, put them in the comments below. If you guys like this video, drop a like. If you love it, hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one.